Today we are going to start a new chapter, and the name of the chapter is Force and Acceleration. And also you can give the name of the chapter Force and Newton Laws of Motion. So first I'll tell you that what are the things we are going to learn in this chapter. So first one is the force and motion. So we are going to learn this one, the force and motion, and then we learn about the Newton laws of motion, then inertia of a body, inertia and mass, momentum, force and acceleration, and then elementary idea of conservation of mass, and the action and reaction force. So this thing we are going to learn in this chapter, the entire thing. So now I'll give some introduction about the chapter, and I'll tell what is the force, and I'll also tell about the different types of force. So in the introduction, we can say that when we think that the body is changing, the body is at rest. What is the meaning of this? And in the previous chapter also we learned about the motion. Also we learn about the body is at rest, the body is in motion, the velocity, and then speed and acceleration, retardation. So many things we have learned. But the question is that why the body will change its condition from rest to the motion? Why the body will accelerate? Why the body will retarded? Okay, what is the reason behind this? That is called the force. The force is only thing which can give the acceleration to the body. So what is the basic definition of force? The definition of force is, the force is that cause which produces acceleration in the body on which it acts. So also you can write force is that cause which produces acceleration in the body on which it acts. Okay, so that is the force. And also there is another definition of force. The definition of force already you learned in class 7. The force that can push, pull, stretch, squeeze, heat, etc. Or the force which can change the shape of the object, which can change the direction of the object. Okay, so these are all called the force. So force is having few characters. So what are the characters? If we push the object will move, or if we pull the object also can move. Stretching, squeezing, changing the shape of the body, which can be done by the force. And so pulling the rope or dragging an object with a rope, so that is also you're applying the force. Now, and also in a playground, when you're playing, you're kicking the ball. Okay, when you kick the ball, what will happen? The ball will get accelerated. Okay, so that is why the basic definition of this one is the force which will produce the acceleration in it. So acceleration will be there, then that is called the force. Now the different types of forces are there. So the first one is called mechanical force. Mechanical force. What is the mechanical force? So mechanical force also is called contact force. So what is the meaning of contact force? The force which acts when the object is in contact with each other. Okay, suppose I am pulling an object, okay, or I am pushing somebody. Then I have a contact with that person or with that object. Okay, so that is why the object is moving. So that is called the mechanical force or the contact force. And next one is the action at a distance force or non-contact force. So you can say next one is action at a distance force. Action at a distant force. So like the acceleration, the force produced by the gravity, the force, the magnetic force. Okay, so if I keep a north pole and south pole, or if I keep a magnetic material near to the magnet, so it will get attracted. Okay, or a north pole and north pole of two magnets will get repelled. So this type of force, there is no contact. Understand? So that is why that is called the non. So we would take an object, and if I drop from certain height, so you observe this one, this is going towards the earth. So earth doesn't have any contact with that, so invisible force, it's pulling the object towards the earth. So that is called the non-contact force. Even the force produced by the electric charge, that is also non-contact or action at a distance force. Okay, so these are all the forces are there. Now another one is muscle force. So what is the meaning of the muscle force? Muscle force means that when we walk, when we do some work, okay, so we'll apply some force. Understand? So our muscles can apply the force. So that is called the muscle force. So muscle exerts force that brings about motion, or will produce some motion. Suppose I want to walk, so I have to apply the force on the ground with my leg or with my muscles. So that is called the muscular force. So you can say muscular force. Muscular force. So action reaction force, and this one muscular force. Okay, so the leg muscles of the frog exerts force that pushes the frogs into the air, okay, so that the frog can jump. Another force is there that is called the frictional force. Frictional force. So what is the frictional force? Suppose if I take an object and this is the ground, what is the surface on which the object is there. So if I apply a force in this direction, so and a force is working in the opposite direction with a contact with this one, this surface, and this is the frictional force. So the frictional force will work in this direction. This is called frictional force. Or if you take a ball and if you just roll it down on the ground, so you'll observe that a certain time, after going to a certain time, the ball will get stopped because some opposite force is working in the opposite direction of the motion. So that is called the frictional force. Now a very interesting thing and a very important thing I'm going to tell you, that is called the resultant force. So what is resultant force? Resultant force means, suppose if I say that an object is raised. What is the meaning of this? Object is raised. What is the meaning of raised? You'll say there is no there is no motion. The question is that to make the object into motion, we need force. That means what you can say? Can you say that there is no force is applied on it? Okay, or in different way, we can say that the resultant force on it is zero. What is the meaning of resultant force? Then I will tell you. Suppose there is an object here, and I am applying a force in this direction, and you are also applying a force in this direction. So suppose this force is bigger. Say, think about this. This arrow is big, so this force is bigger, and the arrow is smaller. This is small. That is why this force is small. So this is the force F1, and this is the force F2. Now, can you tell me which direction the object will move? The object will move in this direction. The object will move in this way. In this way. With what force? With the minus of these two forces. Minus of these two forces means this is F1 minus F2 force. Okay, because F1 force is more than F2 force. So in some cases, suppose you are telling that the object is at rest, that means what? Suppose someone is pushing the object in this direction and someone is pushing the object in this direction. So F1 and F2, if both the forces are same, if F1 is equal to F2, then what you can say? The object will be at rest. The object will be at rest. Okay, so object will not move because the resultant force, you can say this is F suffix R, you can say the resultant force will be 0 in this condition. Okay, so that is why the object will be at rest. Now if I keep this pen here, see the pen is at rest. That means what? The resultant force applied on this pen is 0, okay, or the net force also is called the resultant force, that is called 0. That is why there is no motion in the pen. Suppose if I apply the force in this direction, then I am disturbing the equilibrium, because nobody is there to apply from the force from that side. So if I apply a force in this direction, automatically it will go to this direction. Okay, now if you see, suppose if I apply a force in this direction, just a second. Suppose if I apply a force in this direction and this direction also, so I am applying the force in both the directions. So the object is moving, that means what? The resultant force is 0 here, so that is the resultant force. Okay, now if I apply two forces in this direction, so object will move more faster. That means, suppose in this case, suppose this F1 force and F2 force are working in the same direction. That means the resultant force Fr will be what? F1 plus F2. Okay, so that is the concept of resultant force. Now what is the balanced force? So balanced force means the force acting on a stationary body. What I told you, when the object is at rest, then this force will become balanced. So this force F1 is equal to F2, that means they are equal. That is called the balanced force. So I'll tell you one more time. Balanced force, balanced force. Suppose you are pushing the wall, okay, and you cannot move the wall. Why? Because the wall will also apply force on you, and both the things will get cancel each other. Okay, so you will not be able to move the wall. So that is why both the forces are called the balanced force. Okay, so when the object is stationary, then what are the forces are there? The forces are actually balanced force. Okay. Now, what is the weight? Weight is also a force. What's weight? The weight means the earth is attracting everything towards its center. That means earth is applying a force. Okay, with the, because why? Because if I leave this object, it will fall like this way. Okay, that means acceleration due to gravity is working towards the center of the earth. That means what? That means earth is applying a force, because why? The acceleration is produced. The acceleration due to gravity is produced. So that is why, if an object is here and it will apply the force on this surface of the paper. So that is called the weight of the object. Okay, and the next one is the measurements. How to measure the force, or how to measure them. So you use the instrument called the spring balance is there. So spring balance is used to measure the weight. Okay. So these are the things are there. We'll discuss about different types of forces. So you can go through your textbook so that you can understand easily. Today just introduction. So next class will also continue from the force and motions, everything. So thank you very much.